Hi, I'm Ian.
And I'm Jason.
And this is Ghosts and Bears, the only podcast where we bring you the actual ghost stories
With the actual history.
in the actual place. On this episode of Ghosts and Bears, we're heading downtown again. This is our second part of Government Street, and we're going to the Barton Banker and the Old Morris Tobacconist, coming up on Ghosts and Bears. Well, hello and welcome. It is Ian alone today. Sadly, Jason is off in Calgary doing what he does best, cutting some sort of deal. I wasn't really paying attention, but he is he's getting rid of another car, so that's a blessing for all of us, believe me. In the time he's been gone, I had a very interesting time this weekend. I was super sick on Saturday, so I didn't even get to do ghost walks. I literally just lay in bed and watch Netflix. It's been a long time since I've been that sick, but I'm feeling a lot better now. Went to sleep early last night, threw the cats out of the bedroom because there's no way I'm having my stomach stepped on in the middle of the night. I'm not sure there's anything more annoying. So they sleep outside. But the funny part was I put Randy out around 10, and Rex never really hangs around. He comes in sometimes. I think he's come in once, before we've gone to sleep and hung out with us for a bit, but he doesn't really come in. So I threw Randy out and shut the door, hunkered down to go to sleep. And then at 4:30 in the morning, something woke me up, and I look over, and we had an ensuite put in last year, and it has one of those rolling barn doors, not because we're super stylish, but because it just saved room. It meant we didn't have to lose the room either in the bathroom or in the bedroom for a door to swing open. But the thing with these is they roll very, very easily, which is a good thing. However, last night, 4 a.m., 4:30, my eyes pop open, something is off. And then as I kind of turn my head and look over at the closet and the bathroom door, I watch the bathroom door slowly rumble open by itself. And I'm thinking, oh no. Because if you remember the story about the hangers clanking in the closet, yeah, that was the former closet where it was happening. And my first thought was, what's that? And then my second thought was, friggin' cats. And I sort of spun around and I did the little finger snap thing that Rex responds to, and I didn't even turn the light on. And the next thing I know, I'm hearing meow. And yep, there he is. He's been in the bedroom for like 6 or 7 hours, probably sleeping under the bed. And now I guess he wanted to drink water from the toilet because they are classy like that. So I scooped him up and put him outside and went back to sleep. So yeah, that was my big adventure. Other than that, just been keeping on, doing the work, doing the research. Been enjoying myself doing that, and also have started work in earnest on the Calgary book, which is exciting. Currently working on a couple of places, one of which I had zero idea had any ghost stories. It's a place I've been to multiple times as a kid. And the other place was actually my former elementary school that I went to for a while. And even then, I knew there was just too much weirdness going on there, but I didn't really have the language to put around it what I know it is now. So that's been fun too. So it's been this book is, it's so funny. You think, oh, well, you wrote one ghost book. They're all pretty much the same. Nuh-uh. Vancouver was a huge learning curve for me because I'm not from there. I've never lived in Vancouver. So there was a ton of research involved in that, and not just the ghost stories, but actually the geography of Vancouver. I felt like a real idiot, where by the end of the book, I realized that when people talk about the West End and the West Shore, they're like two different places, which, you think someone would have figured that out, but no, I didn't. Both lovely places, by the way. I just did not realize they were different. I thought it was kind of an interchangeable thing. It's not. And then with Calgary, what's going on there is, as I'm starting to do all the research, it's really triggering a lot of memories. So it's going to be an interesting book. It's going to have a very different flavor, I think. I can already kind of tell that. Today, we're talking about two stories. We're talking about two more places on Government Street, which, as you know, is one of the oldest and most haunted parts of Victoria. The first one we're going to talk about today is 1022 Government Street, otherwise known as the Barton Banker pub currently. That's not how it started out. It started out with a very different part of its life. It was built in 1885, and it was built to be the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. Actually started as the Bank of British Columbia, which quickly merged into the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce not all that long ago, probably 40 or 50 years ago. It was really unusual. First of all, it wasn't built by Thomas Hooper, which, if you've listened to the podcast, you know is automatically a piece of interesting history, because pretty much everything else was. It was the architect was Warren H. Williams, and he's also actually the architect who was the designer for Craig Darragh Castle, which we will talk about on another episode. Kind of a landmark around here. It's downtown. People can, do the downtown thing and then take a walk up a hill and go see Craig Darragh Castle. So that's certainly part of it. It was, 1890s. It was a bank. The bank consisted of the main branch on the lower floor. The upper floor would have had offices, and then the floor above that was actually the place where the bankers would have lived, the tellers. The reason for this was, it was 1800s, right? There was no alarm systems. There was no electricity. So they needed a built-in security system, and that's what these guys were. So we're definitely going to hear the story about that, and how one man in particular ran into a bit of an issue when it came to living there and all those things. So that's all in there. The other part of it was that it was a real statement for the city at the time, because it really showed the optimism of what was going on. The railroad was coming. It was, all these things were happening at the same time that really made the city optimistic. And so this building really reflects that. And that is actually why they talk about the building and why it is such an important piece of our history. Heritage value, I'm pulling this right off the Historic Places website. It's a 3-story Italianate style building on the corner of Government and 4th Streets. It was valued, it's valued as an architectural gem reminiscent of Victoria's late 19th century economic prosperity. It wasn't just optimism, we were doing well. As the Canadian headquarters, so main branch of the Bank of British Columbia, and the most sophisticated and costly structure of its kind in the province at the time of its construction, it really was a big deal when it opened. As I said, it's designed by W.H. Williams, and it epitomizes the image of 19th century banking. It's an excellent example of the detailed use of the classic idiom favored for commercial architecture in that time period. The location of this building is significant as it reflects the early grandeur of Government Street as a major commercial and financial artery in the city. It's a prominent landmark, and its composition of local building materials and distinctive decorative elements such as cast iron features made locally make it significant to the continuity of the historic streetscape of our Old Town District. The bank was there for quite a while, and then it became, it turned into the CIBC, as I said. They shut that down in 1988. And then in 2008, it got sort of a refresh and became the Spirit of Christmas store. Remember, those were really big in the 80s, early 90s. They were like everywhere. And that's what it was for a long time. And it was a pretty impressive store of its kind. And then it shut down and had a great big reno and became the Barton Banker pub. And you will learn the history of why they named it the Barton Banker, and also what went on and what still goes on there. Interesting, the use of cast iron elements. They did this because they did not have the artisans to do the work that they could have done in stone. They didn't have the stone. So what they would do, and they even did this with some of the bay windows. If you go downtown, you're walking around, look up at some of the older buildings with bay windows. Some of them were triangular, some of them were rounded. All of them are cast iron. And again, we just didn't have the wherewithal to make the proper things. And interestingly enough, you'll never see one bigger than 4 stories. And the reason for this, the barges from San Francisco could only haul that length. And so that's what they would do. They would bring up these cast iron windows, these bay windows, barge them up the coast, because at the time, the only cities really on the coast were San Francisco, Olympia, Washington, and Victoria. And they would barge them up and then basically just insert them into the brickwork. So it was pretty interesting how they would do this. The other thing that makes it kind of character defining was it's built on a corner lot, and it actually uses the corner entrance, which is unusual, and also unusual that it still does it. As I said, the cast iron and the pilasters, the sills, the lintels, all these sort of things are unusual as well. And then it had the Renaissance revival elements, arched pediments, balconies with decorative brackets, all these sorts of things were a big deal. And then the decorative elements such as friezes with a sunflower motif. Mercury is in there. He's prominently in there. And the crest of the Bank of British Columbia is still able to be seen. It was a pretty interesting building, and still is. They've done a gorgeous renovation in there. I'm not a huge fan of manufactured pubs, shall we say. We do have a few of them around here. The Barton Banker and also Irish Times, which is a couple blocks up. Same owners, same company, and people flock there like lemmings. The one redeeming feature of the Barton Bankers, they do feature live music, like local live music, which is actually pretty cool, I begrudgingly say. But yeah, so that's the Barton Banker. So you're going to be hearing about that. And then the other place, and this place is, I have to admit, pretty cool. Old Morris Tobacconists. It's had different names over the time, just Morris Tobacconist, E.A. Morris Tobacconists. Right now it's called the Old Morris Tobacconist. And there's good reason for that. This building was built in 1910. And it was built by, you guessed it, the haunted architect Thomas Hooper. If you know about Thomas Hooper and his architectural style, and you look at the Old Morris building, and then you go and look at the Rogers Chocolates building, you will definitely see the same guy. I mean, it's like he phoned it in. The Rogers Chocolates building went up, I believe, 1904. This one was built in 1910, and they do look very, very similar. The thing that makes this significant is Morris Tobacconist was the first and only building that was ever, a business that was ever in there, and it's still going strong today. Same with Rogers, actually. It was the first and only business that was in that building, and it's still happening. So that's actually pretty cool. Heritage value, Morris Tobacconist is valued as the home of one of Victoria's oldest businesses and as a rare surviving example of an early 20th century retail interior in the city. Commissioned by businessman E.A. Morris and completed in 1910. The company itself was established in 1892, very much like Rogers, continues to conduct business from its site today. The value of this unique building lies in its Georgian exterior and interior elements and detailing, and in its lavish building materials such as marble, onyx, and mahogany. The other thing that's really cool, it has something in it called an electrolier. And what it would do is it's a column of Mexican marble, and you can see it if you're a patron. It's in our pictures for our patrons. You can see the electrolier, and it had a flame coming out of it with these sort of 2 guards around it, almost like little ram's tusks, or warthog's tusks, I guess. And there's this flame coming out, and it was there specifically so that gentlemen could come in and light their cigars, and it's still going strong. You can't actually smoke inside, so you can't actually use it, but they kept it going, and apparently it's only on its second light bulb in its life, which is pretty amazing. They provide an excellent representation of the quaint, high Victorian gentleman's club image, and I mean that in the old-timey way, not the modern way with the boobs, suited to the typical male patrons of this specialty shop. Morris Tobacconist presents a unique contribution to the government streetscape and its alluring shopfront, gentlemanly facade, and its masculine interior atmosphere. Yeah, bro. It was, I mean, that's what they sold, tobacco. And of course, tobacco was huge back in the day. They have diversified now. They sell not only cigars, of course, and tobacco and all those good things, but they also sell a lot of high-end shaving stuff and some high-end kind of man things and really high-end pens. So they're kind of leaning into the whole man shop thing, which, whatever works. But I'm impressed by the way they have managed to survive. Because as we know, tobacco kind of on the way out, not a bad thing. And they've found a way to kind of get around that, which is pretty cool. Some character-defining elements, two-story massing and a form articulated by strong manly proportions. The contribution of the facade to the government streetscape is kind of amazing, including that Mexican onyx, leaded glass, glazed tile, all those kinds of things. The exterior arched doorway and semicircular bracketed cornice and the rusticated columns, again, very similar to Rogers. And then, as I said, the interior elements such as the mahogany columns, the pediment of the humidor, wall paneling and display cases, wall mirrors and leaded mirror domes in the ceiling, and that famous onyx electrolier. So those are all still there. That's the cool part. You can just go in there whether you want to buy cigars or not. It's all still in there. It's pretty neat. It really, I would say both of these buildings, I have to say the reno they did on the Bank of British Columbia building to turn it into the Barton Banker is exceptional. They really made it look old-timey. And again, pictures are there for our patrons if you want to take a look and see the inside there. So these are pretty cool places. And of course, pretty cool places, which are old, have some ghost stories in them. It would be disappointing if they didn't. And we're definitely going to be jumping in and hearing those. And I hope you enjoy them. And I hope you enjoy the story time. And we will see you on the other side. Take care. The Old Morris Tobacconist is still here on Government Street, established in 1892, and they've been in their current location since 1910. Again, another building designed by our favorite haunted architect, Thomas Hooper. What is significant about the building is the lushness of the materials with which it was built: marble, onyx, and mahogany. These materials reflect the richness of a gentleman's club from that era, which was a smart choice of the time because the clientele was obviously predominantly male. There's a beautiful and unique glass canopy over the main door, and another feature that makes this store unique is the electrolier that stands in the center of the shop. Handmade from rare Mexican onyx, it is the last functioning model of its kind in the world and stands ready to light any cigar presented to it, if it were legal to smoke in public places in the city of Victoria. There have been a number of paranormal investigations at this location, including one done by our local paranormal investigator, Andrea Bailey, who you may remember has been a guest on our show quite a few times. She's the founder of Unearthing Shadows Paranormal. According to Andrea, there have been reports of someone moving around upstairs, and employees knew there was no one on any other floor, and yet they could hear an office chair rolling around, cupboards and drawers opening and closing, and someone clearing their throat every once in a while, no doubt due to the irritations of the cigar smoke. There were also sensations of cold spots and unsettlement in the back of the store. Andrea went in with her team and began using equipment to try to capture electronic voice phenomena and to see if they could get any readings on electromagnetic field readers. Andrea confirms they did pick up some interesting things during their investigation. While the entity who resides upstairs didn't reveal his identity, He was happy to come forward and communicate. Everyone is quite sure it's a male, possibly an old employee who died upstairs while at work. However, something downstairs is really what caught Andrew's attention. At one time in Victoria, there were rumors of a full underground tunnel system. On some side streets, you will see purple square blocks in the sidewalk. What's under them now are storerooms which extend beyond the sidewalks. The blocks are there to provide natural light and at one point were clear, but over the time and the chemicals used have become purple. When Andrea went downstairs in the tobacconist shop, she found a blocked-off passage entrance. Here's what she had to say about what she found. There seems to be a man associated with the tunnel. It seems like he may have passed away in there, maybe not by accident. We had a lot of communication that revolved around a shovel and an injury from behind, so we're thinking maybe someone came up behind him and hit him on the head with a shovel. I'm not sure he knows what happened to him, and it seems like maybe he's reaching out for help. A few of us felt a hand coming through the tunnel that's closed up with rock and mortar, so someone is there. Employees have experienced poltergeist activity, including items flying off shelves into the middle of the store and light bulbs exploding for no reason. Employees have also complained about feeling watched down in the basement and hearing sounds down there that have no source. All in all, this building is definitely home to some spirits. We're going to talk about a pub now, which is always a good topic to talk about. This one's called the Barton Banker, and this building is a staple of our ghostly walk tours. It's one of the best stories to tell. The building that is now the Barton Banker pub was originally built, you guessed it, as a bank for the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce in 1855 and was designed by an architect named Warren H. Williams. He's the same architect who did the Craig Derrick Castle, which I'm sure will show up on this podcast at some point. It's the local coal baron's home. When this story took place, banks employed young men as tellers. Part of their job was to live above the bank so they could be used as security if need be, keeping in mind, of course, there were no security systems or anything like that. So these guys were a built-in security system. The men understood they were expected to protect the bank and ensure the money remained where it was supposed to, in the vault. There was a young man who worked for the bank who was very superstitious. He was so superstitious that he avoided walking past the bank's neighbor, a funeral parlor. In fact, it was Victoria's very first funeral parlor. The building is still there. This young man named Robert would go out most nights to the pubs down on Moore Street. And even though the quickest way home was to walk up Government Street and past the funeral parlor, he wouldn't do it. He would take the long way round, all the way around the block, so he could approach the bank from another direction and avoid the funeral parlor altogether. However, one night, Robert couldn't face the long way round as the town was being absolutely beaten up by a major storm. As he fought his way up Government Street, he noticed something that filled him with total dread. The door to the funeral parlor was partially open, and there were lights moving around in the far corner closest to the bank. Robert immediately assumed that criminals, who were actually funeral home workers, were taking advantage of the storm to break into the vault through the unprotected wall of the funeral parlor. He knew it was up to him to stop it. Now this sounds a bit kind of movie plot to us, but this is actually pretty common. If you don't have to worry about alarms and all the other things, if you find a weak access point into the building, you can absolutely help yourself to whatever's inside, and this happened quite a bit. Robert inched his way in, planning to take the robbers by surprise. It was pitch black inside, except for that far, far away corner. He felt his way slowly and surely towards the source of the light, but suddenly he tripped over something on the floor and fell forward. He landed on something quite spongy. As he fell, he let out a cry, and the men gathered in the corner rushed over with their lanterns to see what was happening. Their lamps illuminated a ghastly scene. Robert was face to face with a corpse. During the storm, the steamship SS Clallam had foundered and gone down, taking 55 people with her, including many who were women and children. The ship had been running for less than a year and was on the Tacoma, Seattle, Port Townsend, Victoria route. When she was launched, the bottle of christening champagne missed the bow, and when her flag was unfurled for the first time, it was upside down, the universal sign for distress. Both incidents were much discussed and seen as bad signs. The SS Clallam made her maiden voyage in July of 1903, and she sank in a storm on January 8th, 1904. Interestingly enough, the Clallam was also used to transport livestock to the island, and they tried to get pigs to board the ship over in Tacoma, and they wouldn't get on the boat. They absolutely refused to get on the boat. So they figured, we'll just send them over tomorrow. That was the day the ship sank, January 8th, 1904. The storm had been dumping corpses onto the local beach all day, and the funeral parlor was completely overwhelmed and had run out of room. So they'd resorted to setting people out on the floor for identification purposes the next day, because of course people were coming from Tacoma and Seattle and Port Townsend to identify their loved ones. Poor Robert was terrified of anything to do with death, and there he was lying within kissing distance of a drowned man. The dead man's eyes and mouth were open as if gasping for one last breath, and his lips were a horrible shade of blue. Robert picked himself up and ran out of the funeral parlor and into the bank, straight upstairs to his room. But if he thought his experience was over, he was wrong. Unfortunately for Robert, every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the drowned shipwreck victims. This soon led to a lifelong issue with insomnia. Very soon he wanted out of Victoria. There were just too many reminders of the worst night of his life. When Robert approached his boss about transferring to a different branch, there was only one place available. The bank had opened up a new branch to accommodate a recent gold rush. It was located in Dawson City in the Yukon. There were not many people other than those searching for gold who were excited to go to the far north, but Robert went. But his insomnia followed. He started to write poetry to give him something to do during the night. The verse, as he called it, became longer. Soon he was writing some significant pieces, including The Cremation of Sam McGee and The Shooting of Dan McGrew. Robert Service became one of Canada's most celebrated poets, nicknamed the Bard of the North. Sometimes ghosts don't haunt where they died. Sometimes they return to significant places in their lives where they feel an emotional tie or where they've had a life-changing experience. One of these ghosts haunts the Barton Banker. This presence was first noted in 1958 by a woman named Lily. Lily lived across the street from the building and taught weaving in her room, which was in an old hotel on Government Street. She was distressed by the fact that a man on the upper floor of the bank was standing at the window staring straight into her room. This happened night after night, and finally Lily was so unnerved she called the police. They spoke with the bank staff, who apologized but explained that the upper rooms were no longer in use. The police did their job and asked to see the room which was causing so much distress. Sure enough, upon investigation, it was clear to the officers that no one had been in any of the upstairs rooms for quite some time. The dust had not been disturbed. No human being had been in there for ages, at least not a live one. It didn't take long for someone to connect the dots. In the 1950s, a keen reporter from Harper's Bazaar had gone to the south of France where Robert Service had been living and eventually died. He wanted to interview Robert specifically about his wild and exciting life in the Yukon. Unfortunately, Robert, then in his 80s, was only interested in talking about his time in Victoria and his face-to-face encounter with a recently drowned corpse. The poor reporter wasn't able to pry much more out of Robert, so the story became part of the feature. Coincidentally, one of Lily's students remembered reading that article and was able to explain to Lily who she was probably seeing. I'm not sure how much comfort the information brought Lily, who now knew she was being watched by a ghost, but it certainly helped when it came time to choose a name for the pub, which opened in 2007. Robert Service was both a bard and a banker, and the pub is named after him. If you visit the pub, there's a real possibility you might feel Robert on the stairs. He's sometimes seen descending the staircase through the middle of the pub, although not as often anymore. His bank is a bit more crowded than he'd like, but there's still reports of people seeing him in the upstairs window on the far left. If you really want to see a ghost, though, there may be one way to do it. Go into the pub, find a seat, and ask your server for a bottle of Robert Service Ale, and his picture is on the bottle. All right, friends, welcome back. Thank you for hearing those stories, listening to those stories. I hope you enjoyed them. I have really enjoyed doing that sort of ghost walk through your ears kind of thing. It's been a lot of fun to do that, and going down there and recording and having trucks go by and all the rest of it. I will say I am sorry if I repeat myself when I do the history. I recorded those stories sort of 3 weeks ago, and then when I sit down and I do this, I get a little carried away in my historical stuff because I do love it. It's not just the ghost stories. I really do get excited about the history stuff. So hopefully that wasn't too painful to be like, we know. Oh, I'm just turning into someone's grandpa at Thanksgiving dinner telling the same stories. It's just embarrassing. Wanted to say thank you to everyone who just keeps supporting us. I mean, our numbers keep going up. I am so grateful for everyone who shares the podcast, because that's really how it happens, is people take the time to tell someone else about it. Please do remember to give us that shout out, share the podcast page, or do a review on iTunes, 5-star review with a fun thing. That would be amazing. Something you can do. Doesn't cost you anything, but it sure helps us a lot. So think about doing that. And I also want to thank our patrons. It's so fun to see the pictures coming in from people who are getting their patron gear. The people who are our patrons right now, we've got Alexa, Debbie, Jackie, Charlotte, Julie, Ruth, Rebecca, Mary Frances, Cassie, Gina, and Victoria, Sandy, Christopher, David, Ashley, Jeremiah, Mamere, Elizabeth, BB Nix, Melinda, Jordan, Tammy, James, Taya, Evan, Arwin, Steve, Kyle, Catherine, Mari, and Christy. So thank you guys for your continued support, because it makes all the difference in the world. And I hope you are also enjoying your fun, weird things that you're getting. We send out not just stuff. We have our monthly modern seance where we just have a Zoom call and we talk about what's going on with everybody and kind of build our community and get to know each other, which is really fun. We do the bonus episodes. So we release this podcast every other week. And on those off weeks, if you're a patron, just even at the first level, you're going to get an episode of Ghost Stories I Have Heard, or Ghost Stories We Have Heard. And that's going to come out on the off weeks of when we don't put out a regular podcast. And that's just me and Jason reading ghost stories we've collected or heard, and then we talk about them a little bit. It's just fun. It's just fun to read those ghost stories and kind of talk about them and hypothesize. Also, we do put out the pictures, as I have mentioned. So if you want to see where we are, where we're going, what we're doing, or you want to have a visual for the podcast episode, that's where we're going to be able to find that. And also the stuff. You can't get wrong with the stuff. I love our logo. I've said this before. I just think it's just so fun. And we send out stickers, mugs, t-shirts, and those just show up at your door after 3 months of being a patron. So thank you. We're really, really grateful. There's also a chance to get a signed copy of my first book, Victoria's Most Haunted. So, if you're interested, just go to patreon.com/ghostsnbears, and it's just ghosts with an N and then bears, and it will take you right to us. We've also got merch you can purchase if you'd rather just do that. That's out there. If you go to our website, ghostsandbears.com, it's got everything on there. It's got how to reach us. It's got our Instagram. It's got Facebook. It's got merch. It's got Patreon. It's got it all. So that might just be the easiest thing to do. We also love hearing from you. I love hearing stories. I love finding out what's going on with you guys and how things are going. And if you have some sort of experience in one of the stories we've done, I got a message from Anna, and I asked her if I could share this because this was really fun. Remember we talked about the Bent Mass Pub? We did that on an episode a little while back. And Anna sent in this great email about that, and I encourage you to do that. If you've had an experience at a place we've talked about, we want to hear it. If it's not at the place or it's kind of near it, or you're in Victoria and something weird happened, hey, throw us an email. Love it. So Anna says, I recently listened to your podcast on the Bent Mass, and I have a story about that place. About a year ago, I went on a James Bay ghost walk with a friend, and the Bent Mass was one of the places we talked about. They told us a story about a little boy who was known to frequent the building, telling people it was his birthday. The story brought back a memory for me. About 6 years ago, not long after moving to Victoria, I went for lunch there with my husband and daughters, who were 3 and 5 at the time. We were outside on the patio having lunch, and this little boy kept coming up to us. After approaching us a few times, I was looking around to see where he was sitting, but he didn't seem to be with anyone outside. He went up the stairs inside, and that was that. We didn't see him again. Fast forward to after the ghost walk. We were all sitting at the dinner table, my daughters now 9 and 11, and I asked my husband if he remembered this, not mentioning about the story for the ghost tour, because I thought it possible I'd just invented the memory, but he said he did recall it. Then my daughter chimed in and said, remember how that little boy and how he all kept saying to us that it was his birthday? I'm a solid ghost believer now. So there you go. So thank you, Anna, for that. That was amazing. I do get stories like that. I remember when we did the Empress, which we've talked about as well, and we talk about the 6th floor specifically. And I had these 2 ladies on the tour. And afterwards, the one comes up to me and she's looking a little pale. And she goes, I can't believe you talked about the 6th floor of the tower. And I said, why? And she said, well, I was with a friend and she was staying there and I live here. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go. And my friend said, please, 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 please don't leave me in here by myself. I'm so freaked out. And she's like, why? She goes, I don't know. I just feel really weird and I'm really uncomfortable. So she said, okay, I'll stay. So they crashed out. And around 3 a.m, someone started banging on the door, like really, really loudly. And she jumped up to go and shut it down. And as she did, she opened the door. There was no one there. And she looked in the hallway, no one there. And she thought, well, that's so weird. She shut the door and she has her hand on the door handle. And her friend said, who was it? Who was there? What's going on? And this woman turned around and said, there's nobody there. Like, honestly, there's just nobody there. And as she was saying this, bang, 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 super loud on the door. And she whipped it open as fast as she could. There was still nobody there. She said for the rest of the night, they did not sleep. They sat up until morning. And then in the morning, they went down and to the front desk and they kind of complained, like, this happened and it was weird. The woman goes back and she talks to security and they check all the records from sort of 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. No one came or went from the floor. There was nobody walking around the hallways. They have camera footage, all that stuff. There's just nothing. So when we get those sort of backups for stories like this, it's pretty cool. Especially when the people have no idea about the stories. So the fact that I had told her that story and it was literally on the same floor. Yes, she wasn't thrilled. But thank you for that, Anna. I love those stories. Please do send them in. We always love to hear them and are always excited to get them. So if you don't know, like I said, giving us a review would be amazing. You also get to join us on, we have a exclusive server on, hold on, I can remember it now. I'm not old and out of touch. I know what Snapchat is. It's not Snapchat. It's called Discord, and we have a server on there. I've done a little bit of chatting with people on there. So if you are a Patreon, you automatically get signed up to our Discord server and we can chat in real time. So that's kind of fun. So do keep all those lovely things in mind. If you're thinking about ways to help us out, we could sure appreciate that. Jason will be back next time. I'm assuming unless he's out doing something else. But no, he loves being on the show. He loves you guys. He's always talking about what we can do to make it better. And sometimes he gets even great ideas for where we should do episodes from and stuff like that. And he's really into it. So I'm really, really grateful for him. And I'm sure it's fun hearing him as well, not just me going on and on. I do enough of that on the Ghost Walks. It's just all about the Ian show when I'm telling those stories. But want to thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you for continuing to listen. And you know, if you have any suggestions for the show, let us know. I'm pretty open. Be nice about it. I am a human and I have feelings. Too many feelings. What was that line from Mean Girls? You don't even go to the school. I just have a lot of feelings. I love that movie. But yeah, it's a fun thing to do. So do let us know what you think. Let us know what you think might make it better. I'm open to that. Let me know if there's something that bugs you. Is there something going on that just irritates you that we can change? Sometimes we can't. Sometimes it's just the way it is. But if we can, we would certainly like to try. So please let us know. Otherwise, thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you for being with us. And I hope you have an amazing week. And no matter where you are right now listening to this, either you're working or you're avoiding work or you're driving to work or you're just kicking back and going for a walk, whatever it is, please remember we are the only ghost podcast that gives you the actual ghost story with the actual history in the actual place. And hopefully soon, now that travel restrictions are over, that place will be with you. Thanks so much. Take care, you guys, and we will catch you next time.